I know Greg Lake is coming out with a solo album any day now.
Yes, and I can tell you a funny story about it. Would you like funny true story?
Please.
Fine. I went to London about 3 weeks ago. I was working with Andy Summers on the 2-guitar album in Bournemouth, because we're both local boys. And Greg actually lives a mile from me in the country, in Wimborne. And I went to London and got off the train, which was 12 minutes later returning to Bournemouth, and there were 2 of Greg's musicians, Ted McKinnon, the drummer, and Gary Moore, the guitar player, just about to return to Bournemouth. And Gary Moore said, "Curse you for writing that middle part of Schizoid Man," he said.
It's happening.
But they were nice men.
Yeah.
Greg's done a few gigs. He did the Reading Festival recently. But I haven't seen or heard his new band for myself.
Was he approached when...
3 musicians were approached.
Okay.
Bill Bruford and Adrian Ballou were the first 2, and Tony Levin was the third. Tony Levin would have been approached at the same time as Bill and Adrian. Had I thought for a moment, he would have conceivably been interested in the band, but I didn't.
Why is it called King Crimson? Why is that name brought back?
Simply because the band is King Crimson. That's in a sentence. King Crimson isn't a band that one could reform, and I don't think it would be possible to sit down and say, I'm going to reform King Crimson. I don't think you could form a band and call it King Crimson. I think a band playing King Crimson repertoire doesn't make it King Crimson. April Wine playing Schizoid Man is April Wine playing Schizoid Man. Even Greg Lake playing in the chord The Crimson King is Greg Lake playing a song of which he contributed an equal share of getting it together.
Right.
And he has as much right to use the repertoire as anyone, let's face it. But it doesn't make it King Crimson. My decision was to form a First Division group, and that decision I took last November 1980, travelling from Manchester to Liverpool with the League of Gentlemen. That was the morning that Johnny Tubal, our drummer, was sent home for continued misbehaviour. And I felt I needed to work with musicians that could make a commitment, that I could rely would be on stage and functioning at the height of their musical power as well as with them. In other words, you're talking about professionalism, but a little more. And I've shied away from professional musicians for quite a while, because the spirit of music is really more interested me than competence.
Yes.
So whereas with the League of Gentlemen the emphasis was on spirit rather than competence, the emphasis in Crimson. Yay!
No thanks.
Thanks. That's wonderful. Cheers. You look really good.
Thank you.
Doesn't Donna look good? She looks really great.
The first time I met her today, she looks fantastic.
Fabulous.
Okay, you're talking about the spirit of music.
Yeah.
Okay. Something touched me. I read the musician article with Strummer. I just loved it. I read it over and over and over and over again. It was just really great. And you said you were on stage one night and you were able to hear the next note. You must have really gotten into it.
I wept.
You continue what you're saying. I'm going to come back.
Right.
And
the emphasis on Crimson is on spirit and competence. Competence is a means of creating conditions which are more likely that you can fly. You can never guarantee you can be in touch with music when it really moves, but you can work to create a situation in which it's a lot more likely to happen. First of all, there's things which you needn't do, like go on stage drunk, flying on coke, or all the rest of that. That's an area you needn't do. And then there's other areas you can do, like you keep yourself in good health, you practice, you come to terms with what you are as a human being, like you begin to separate the music you're making from yourself, so that you realise that you don't make music, you don't play music, the music plays you. The musician is a person that music has come to live in. So the musician's commitment is to clean up the house, put the house in order so that music can come and live there. But there are different analogies and things. We know what we're talking about.
Sure.
Things with Crimson, it's not enough that the men are experienced professional musicians. That's kind of only part of it. These guys are good.
Tony Levin is excellent. Saw him the other night. He was basing for Simon Book.
Really?
Yes.
That was just before I came into town.
Talk about it happening. Being out there among 500, I couldn't see the stage. I almost forgot while I was there. But it was a celebration, and as bad as the sound was that far back, it was just nice because there was good vibes, so to speak, in the air. And everybody was there for a singular purpose. They were so big and they were so good and their words were so meaningful and listened to that everybody was there for that purpose. There was no anarchy that I noted, at least in the midfield. On the outside of Central Park, there was always some anarchy.
I have a hunch that very soon we're going to be able to go back to large festivals. You know, I spent a lot of time laying down conditions for ways a band can work in the marketplace. Like you play in small venues, so that you can make some kind of contact with the person who's playing and who's playing. So, here's an interesting statistic. You know, all those years we played 3,000 seaters because we were told you had to.
Yeah.
You make as much money from a 1,200 seater as you do from a 3,000 seater. Interesting? It's not that anyone, of course, lied to us. It's just that maybe they were too dumb to go a bit further on the figures. And that's it. King Crimson are doing kind of 1,200, 1,500 seaters as a norm.
Yeah.
And where it's not available, I think we have 3,000 seaters. Yesterday I vetoed a 4,000 seater. And a month ago vetoed a tour of Spain and Italy in 5,000 seaters, because that was the only situation we can make money. But here in America, you can earn as much money working at 12 to 1,500 as you can 3,000 capacity venue. I think it's soon going to be possible to play to large festivals in the open air, which are kind of governed by different laws or different rules to do with how you organise energy in space. Like at Madison Square Gardens, I think it's too small to be big, and too big to be small. So you never find an optimum point at one of the other ends of the size spectrum to be able to get off the ground.
I look at the Garden as an overcrowded prison.
Yeah.
And I look at Central Park as space that belongs to everybody.
There you go. It's big enough so that you can get enough people in to actually generate the kind of spirit of the event. And I think there's just, you know, this is difficult stuff to talk about because it's only kind of hunches and instincts. There are different trends and different qualities of energies which kind of move about. And I think just this month, September 1981, something has changed in the air, which is going to enable people, ordinary human beings, to touch each other in a way which hasn't been possible for a long time, and I didn't see throughout the 1970s. Rock music never got into 1970 for me. I was here in 1969. I played to 750,000 people with the Stones in London. I don't know how many in West Palm Beach.
Sure.
And it was different. You know, there really was a togetherness. Since then, the public tradition of the performer has been polluted. I think public figures have blown their responsibility and have lost credibility. We don't believe them, we don't trust them anymore. We know that when we go to a large festival, we're going along to be ripped off. The only reason there's a lot of people there is not to generate a spirit of the event in the open air, where a lot of people can come together and touch, because someone can clean up. You know, and that taints the whole proceedings. I think that's changing. I think there is a new breed of performer who's just getting to the point of saying it's really not good enough to make money, just to make money, and are prepared to be seen to be finding a different way.
You sit back at the end of the day, and you sit back and you say, well, what have I done that can really make me happy? As you said, people I think who are really into their music, people who are honest, and we know who they are, and we know who they're not.
I think you can tell fairly easily.
You can tell fairly easily. Just can't go on with an adding machine. Now, sure, of course, you've got to keep a certain margin of profit. I also think that city officials, like Mayor Koch, are beginning to see that it is a very nice gesture, and you need goodwill.
Another thing is that the rock audience that you have for Lennon or Simon Garfunkel is not, inverted commas, the kids. It's like anywhere from about 17 to 45.
That's right.
You're not talking about, from a political point of view, a few irrelevant numbers. You're talking, in that case, about 500,000 people in New York. I reckon all of them could vote.
I didn't see too many young people at the Simon & Garfunkel. And those who were, I think their older brothers and sisters, they had a reason for it. I think they came there and they were probably impressed by just the other people around them.
You know, we tend to think that large gatherings of people that are, inverted commas, non-political or whatever, are only young people. I mean, I think it's really great that people younger in the middle part of their life can come together in numbers. That people can come together in those numbers at any age group is really incredible. Great. It says here, there are 4 reasons for me doing any work. Should earn me a living, give me an education, be fun, and be socially useful. If I can't do those 4 things at once, then, you know, I don't think I want to do it. I want in the next 12 to 18 months to remove all compartments from my life. That is, I don't wish to make any distinctions between business and pleasure, friends and people I work with, or any part of my life. I want it simply to be what I am. And I want to do that in the next 12 to 18 months, so that by the end of the incline to 1984, I'm a fully functioning human being.
Maybe I'm a bit naive. I think you've got enough people behind you over the years that you're allowed to do this. You're allowed to have a spontaneous saying, great, let's do it. You're able to call and approach.
That's not true. First of all, I'm very fortunate. I'm a very, very lucky man. Secondly, you would be surprised perhaps to know how hard I work to create my luck, and how hard I work when fortuitously luck arrives to act on it. I actually work too hard. That's my reservation. But given that as an opportunity as well, it provides opportunities. And how can I be as busy as I am and not crazy?
Unless there's some feedback, positive feedback coming along the way.
Yeah, there's a few people I trust to give me positive feedback. You also find you get an increase in negative feedback. I mean, there's a proportional increase. Whether you live in a village, in a town, or in a city, everything is kind of the same. You know, whatever rung of the ladder you're on, whatever speed you're moving, it's the speed you're moving. I will say this: it's only since April that, because of some work I've been doing in my life, because of some experiences I've been having, that I'm in a position where I can actually handle King Crimson in a way which doesn't spoil me or allow me to spoil King Crimson's potential. Because the amount of attention which King Crimson is going to get, I think, is a lot more substantial, perhaps, than anyone can realise at the moment. And that kind of attention can really blow you away. It can really sit you.
I think you've been going through sort of a grounding experience over the last, from when you left the first time to the point where you were able to go back in.
Yeah, I've spent 7 years getting ready. My options were reserved. I had no particular wish or intention to continue in the music industry into 1984. But for certain reasons, I decided to and took that decision.
What is the drive to 1981? Was you expected something really bad to happen? 1981, there was going to be something, the apocalypse.
I suggested that 1981 would be a qualitatively different time to 1978, and I suggest it is. I suggest that 1984 is going to be quite remarkably different to 1981. And if you look between 1974 and 81, take that 7-year period, the world is quite different now. Take the 3-year. Let's talk about energy, for example.
Okay.
Let's talk about political turbulence. Let's talk about separatist movements.
Is a fact of life.
Let's even go to 78 and bring it down to the record industry.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, the record industry now is not the industry it was in 1978. I mean, but then you could drop $350,000 on an act that were untried because you thought that publicity would make them successful. You could spend $8,000 on taking a group to dinner that weren't a successful group. And this was not considered offensive. I mean, I felt offended that anyone could behave like that. I mean, not even stupid, it seemed offensive. Now, you wouldn't find that quite again. You don't have the room for making those mistakes, and they wouldn't be tolerated. And there's also a changing mood in the public, that the public are not prepared to put up with some excesses because the public finds them offensive too. Like, if you're on welfare and all you can afford to do is, maybe your one treat a month is spend 10 or 12 bucks on going to a rock show. And a guy drives up in the limo, and he's obviously out of his brain. You know, that really is upsetting. But that's the kind of turkey you support. And in the record industry, some of the manipulations in the industry, really, people are not prepared to tolerate them anymore. You can't flaunt wealth, for example.
I think one of the great things about Bruce Springsteen, having gone to see him in concert, it was like a rebirth of concert going to me. Because having seen concerts for years, they all started to, and this is when I get scared, when they start to mesh into one. And I say, well, if I'm so involved in this industry, I can't let that happen to me. I've got to somehow ask myself why it's happening. But when I went to see Springsteen, I saw the new breed of performer. And this was in the Garden, a traditionally hateful place to see a concert for me personally. I forgot where I was. The distractions disappeared. Because just like with Simon and Garfunkel, it was all for one and one for all. And it was incredible. And that was a change. And, you know, maybe...
The Grateful Dead are another band.
Oh, yeah. They've always been all for one and one for all. They buy up all the tickets and then go night after night after night after night after night. Talking about welfare. And I know there's people are beginning to think a little more creatively. Workfare, I think, is a great idea of keeping people active. Because from personal experiences, I know people, who have bouts with depression. And one of the things is they become inactive, and the inactivity feeds the depression. And just for them to do simple things is harder and harder. Is this something which you look as a positive change?
Well, I tell you honestly, it's that anyone who's at all interested by this idea of small mobile intelligent unit has until the end of this year to get in place, to establish some kind of place. I mean, it may be simply getting a piece of grain outside the town, or getting involved with another people in a communal venture to get a house established, or getting involved in a small business, or however one is establishing themselves in terms of doing something. My feeling is that after the end of this year it's going to be infinitely more difficult to do it, mainly because of economics. But politics and economics now go, it's hand in hand. It's going to be politically and economically more difficult to get established. So the next three, up to 81, the drive to 1981 is establishment. The incline to 1984 is consolidation. I think we have 3 years to consolidate the position we've made for ourselves. I have some interest outside the music industry, which I underwrite. A family venture in Cornwall, an adult education experiment, community experiment in West Virginia, as well as establishing my own base in Wimborne.
Farming communities, sort of like Walden too?
Not exactly like that, it's smaller than that. But it's a foothold, and a very precarious foothold. It's hard. We have 3 years to get it in place. That's my sense, my hunch. After that is a period of interaction between the small mobile units and the dinosaurs, so that a different way of thinking, a different way of working permeates larger companies is a simple way of expressing that.
Either it does or they collapse.
The period of collapse is 87 to 90, when the new forms of working have to be functional and in place, so that I see, for example, the National Health Service in England is incredibly unwieldy and inefficient. But Wimborne in Dorset has its own small local hospital, which the local community could support. And I think it'll have to. And it'll have to take care of its own education and sewage and draining facilities and so on. It doesn't mean exactly what we normally understand by decentralisation. I mean, you need some kind of central organising point. Organisation not in the sense of coercion, which we have now, a coercive centre. Control as regulation rather than control as coercion, if you like, is what I sense. So you need some kind of central postal agency to organise postal areas and so on. But now, if I want a letter to go from Wimborne to Corfmullen, 1.5 miles, I put it in a post box in Wimborne, it's collected and taken to Bournemouth, 10 miles, and then delivered to Corfmullen, 10 miles, instead of being processed locally. Well, it's simpler, they think, to organise in the way of a dinosaur, but it's inefficient. That's just one example.
This is something which is going to happen naturally by just a number of intelligent people beginning to see that the way things are, and that smaller is more within our grasp, that smaller is more within our control.
Yeah, not everything is efficient working small, you know, and the Schumacher ideas are very, very important. But some things don't function that well small. And not everything can be recycled, and so on and so on. But I'd say, addressing the larger point you made, one can act from intelligence or from necessity.
Right.
And one works from both
Sure.
in practice.
Do you think, do you have a fear that we're going to hit a world depression before all of this takes hold in a...
Yes, it's an inevitability. Given...
How do we protect ourselves going into a world depression?
First of all, you have to learn to work with others. And before you do that, you have to learn to work with yourself. One accepts responsibility for one's own feelings, whatever other position. It's not enough that we're born into a family which is socially disadvantaged and all the rest of it. You know, we're all disadvantaged in one way or another. We're all fucked up. Big deal. All right, so we're fucked up. What are we going to do? Say we're fucked up, I can't help what I'm doing. If we accept that, you know, and behavioural psychology is demonstrated quite accurately, you know, that's how it is. But there is a point of freedom inside all of that, and we have to make contact with it. Politically, if we accept the arguments of behaviourism, all we can hope for is Big Brother. Since we're stupid and dumb and we're born disadvantaged and we're fucked up.
That's a scary thought.
Sure. So we have to act as if we act from our own centre of initiative, knowing that most of the time we don't. But we have to act as if that's true. And then, acting as if that's true, we really have to make that true. So we have to work with ourselves. We have to find a point of freedom. So if I say, hey Bruce, you know, you look like a fucking slut.
I do.
You know, is your day going to drop apart? And then if I say to you, Bruce, you know, I've been looking forward to doing this interview with you because, you know, I think you're a nice guy, and the last time we met I enjoyed the interview, then you feel great. But there's no freedom in either. There's freedom where you go through the middle of it. So what you have to do is get to that point where whatever's going on, you're there, you can be there. At that point, you're independent. And I define independence as the capability of working with other people, the capacity to work with other people. Then you have a network of people all working together who you can rely on when the chips are down. And then we turn around and find, boy, it's not just in the house I live in, it's all down the street. And you know what, it's not just all down the street, but this town is really nice. Mm-hmm. And then you look around and you find that, hey, it's not that we've got a welfare society by legislating the structures of support systems. It's that because everyone cares for each other, we have a welfare society. Boy, what a different way of going about things. So that's it.
Right.
Work with other people, but you have to work with yourself first.
And I hope in the years to come enough people think like Robert Fripp. The panic is, and here we're living in 1980, a year ago, John Lennon was, I mean, that reference comes up so clear in everything we talk about these days.
We have 9 years.
Yeah.
We have 9 years. And it's easier than we think, and it's as difficult as we think. It's as soon as we make a decision that we are going to accept responsibility for ourselves and do something about working with ourselves, everything changes. Just taking that decision and everything's different. It's that everything is the same, it's just that everything has changed. It's not just a question of, here's the car with a man in it behind the wheel. You suddenly have a driver of an automobile. It's as simple as that. It's being a human being instead of being a human animal.
Exactly. I listened to your tape before, of the album. I did notice there was a real tightness in it, and it sounded more of an arrangement than a League of Gentlemen. I was left a little uneasy on the end of the album. I was expecting something else, something additional on the end. I'm so used to something crazy happening at the end of a Fripp compilation.
You see, you mustn't expect anything.
Right, I don't expect anything.
I mean, that's your surprise.
You're putting demands on
That's
me.
what you
That's
expected.
what I'm doing.
You see, it's a prison. It really is a prison. Expectation is prison. But you see, you were surprised by the end.
It's true. Some of the things that struck me about it. Okay, this is a dangerous place. That little sequence there.
Do you want to hear the story about that?
Please.
Right, this. Boy, we're coming to the end of our time, and this kind of story is the kind of story which ends interviews. This is a true story. Thaler and Gingy is an anagram. The song is about urban violence and crime on the streets. And the presentation is of a man who's just been mugged, and he's being interviewed. This is just the presentation of the song. So you have Adrian, the actor, the singer's actor, playing the role of this man, saying, "This is a dangerous place. He held a gun against my head. I wouldn't want to live here." So we sent him out into the studio, and he said, "This is a dangerous place. He held a gun against my head. I wouldn't want to live here." And we said, we need a bit more spirit in this. Why don't you maybe take this little pocket cassette machine and walk around the block, and you'll get the feel of being on the street. So he thought, yeah, that's great. So he took the cassette machine, and we got on working. He went around the block. He walked up the road, and he put it in, and a dog barks. And he comes on the cassette and says, "This is a dangerous place. He held a gun against my head. I wouldn't want to live here." And one block out, a street gang set on him. Completely surrounded, little Adrian muttering into his cassette machine. Right? Hey man, what's that? What you got there, huh? What you doing? What's that?" Adrian with the cassette machine said, Nothing. "Hey man, what's that?" Saying nothing. They grabbed the cassette machine and played it. And the cassette machine said, "This is a dangerous place. He held a gun against my head. I wouldn't want to live here. Hey man, what gun? What's this? You're a policeman." And Adrian's shaking with fear, completely surrounded by a heavy gang, doing this piece about being numbered on the street, and here he's being numbered. Terrified. "I'm not a policeman," he says. However anyone could mistake a nice, middle American Adrian for a policeman. I don't. Anyway, he tore his shirt open, pointed at his Talking Heads t-shirt, which he had on, said, look, I'm a musician, I'm in a group. We're recording just down the road." And this poor, trembling, lovely man, they obviously thought, this guy is really not on a razzle. So they let him go. And he wandered around, and then he put on the cassette machine. "Oh boy, I thought they were going to kill me for sure." And two policemen saw him coming out of this heavy fracas on the heavy block, and came up and said, "Hello sir, what are you?" He said, "I'm a musician. We're recording around here. Do you have any drugs on you, sir?" And they went right through him. Every pocket, inside out, took the cassette machine apart, looked into the battery compartment for drugs, whatever. Satisfied, sent him on his way. He came back in. He'd been gone 40 minutes. "Where have you been?" And he said, "You won't believe this." He said, "I've been numbered." I said, "Did you record it?" And he said,
"Nice guy."
"No, no." And then he told us the story. And I put the cassette machine going as he told the story. And he was trembling. I mean, he was really shaking.
Oh, God.
And then on the cassette, we had the first voice. He's walking up the block from the studio. The dog barks. He says, "This is a dangerous place, elegant," and so on. Then you have him next on the tape coming away. "I thought they were going to kill me for sure." Really shaking. And then you have the story of him telling the story of all this happening. And we put the whole lot onto the record. So when you listen to Thaler and Gingy next time, you have a story about a story.
Oh my God.
And it's all there on the record for real.
That's correct. There's always something in it. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I want to take your picture.
Oh.
Because I'm tired of looking at you holding a bowl of fruit.
Yes, I understand. Well, I don't know that I have...
You look like a slob today, Robert.
What can I say? I yesterday came up here painfully smart.
Sit on the black couch because it's a good contrast.
Right.
And there's none of that shining metal stuff.
What I did today was dress warm, although actually this is a Giorgio Armani designer shirt.
Really?
And anyone who knows anything at all about clothes knows that this shirt is the whole statement of the stuff. Uh-huh. Shall I tell you something? These trousers were the last trousers I wore with King Crimson in 1970.
Have you seen Twilight Thought? Are you going to?
I had tickets on Tuesday night, but I didn't get in until the plane didn't land until 8 o'clock.
Oh.
This has been an 8-day through San Francisco, Los Angeles, into New York, London. I fly on Sunday morning, get in just in time for a week's rehearsals with Crimson before going on the road.
When are you coming to New York?
Savoy the 5th, 6th and 7th. November.
Oh, I wanted to ask you this. You're playing at the bottom line Saturday night.
Tonight too.
Yeah. She tried to get me in.
Oh
Is
boy.
there any way?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I can't do anything other than, if you walked in with me, I have a guest,
Mm-hmm.
I have a date that I'm going to try and get in.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Wow.
If they can't do anything for you,
Sure. Yeah.
what they may be able to do is get you standing room. Go for that. Don't even bother about trying for table.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I wanted to see it.
See if
I
you
wanted
can
to
get
see
standing.
Maggie and Terry and Suzy also.
I love the roaches.
Forget about it.
Great, thanks for that.